Hey guys, today I want to talk to you about a tank that was actually put into service on the base of a pattern from and which was actually introduced in the game a few years ago in a Christmas event in honor with the corporation of Arnold Schwarzenegger. It is of course the M47 Iron Arnie. And this tank is developed on the basis of a Patton medium tank, which was in the service of the Austrian armed forces, and basically Arnold Schwarzenegger was, I think, for a brief period actually a driver with this tank. So the Iron Arnie was developed by Wargaming in a cooperation or with Arnold because they probably paid him, and yeah, they just introduced this tank and they said, okay, this is a pattern that you served with and we'll make it just a little bit better than a regular pattern. The result is a funny type of tank. So this is a tank that has a really low amount of hit points for a tire rate tank especially, but to compensate that it has some really strong armor. The tank does have a really strong armor, but it only has strong armor or it doesn't have strong armor on the lower plate, though the turret armor and also the hull armor is pretty strong. uh, to compensate on the other side, the tank doesn't really have some really good penetration, but at the same time it has some really average or mediocre DPM. So it's a toss-up. Basically you have a 230 millimeters of pen, which is absolutely excellent for tire 8, but the problem is that the dispersion values are pretty bad. So the tank will perform best when it's up close in a closer range. The problem is that the tank doesn't really have the DPM to back it up. So it does have 320 alpha damage, which is pretty good, especially for a medium tank, but the DPM isn't up to snuff with the tire 8, and as you can see over here, it does kind of get penned by AP if the enemy know where to shoot. So whenever you fire at this tank's lower plate, you will pen it quite easily. Yeah, I just had my best run of games in this tank. I basically had 15 games, out of which with this tank yesterday, out of which 14 were wins and one ended in a draw. So I don't know why, but this tank kind of deserves its reputation as an Iron Arnie, because for some reason, although it has, like I said, a few drawbacks, the armor makes it so that it kind of stays alive despite its bad weak point pull quite a lot. So in this battle, as you are seeing right now, the Iron Arnie is a tank that can do quite a bit of damage. It doesn't necessarily always spam the enemy target, but it does a bit of damage. It's top tires, so you're gonna see it in a pretty sweet environment. Also, the enemy team is pretty bad, so as long as you know how to press the battle over here, you should do quite fine. So why do I like the Iron Arnie and why do I don't like it? So I like the Iron Arnie because it's a tank that works, and it works pretty well, and it has some pretty reliable armor. At the same time, I don't like the Iron Arnie because the armor does tend to bail out on you whenever you think that you're doing pretty good, and in a tier 10 game, the armor doesn't really count for anything. So that's the balancing figure over here. And also the tank only has 40 kph because it's a pattern, so the pattern only has doesn't really have really good mobility. Although this one, you might say, it has decent mobility for a medium tank because it does go up to its 40 kph damage pretty reliably, but it's not necessarily the fastest to go there. So as you saw, this was a pretty below average damage, and then we're finishing the game with approximately 3.7k damage done. And yeah, this is pretty standard game that you can expect in the Arnie. Now let's go to the next battle, and I'll show you a little bit more. of how this tanks works. So now we're back on another game with the Iron Arnie. This time this is a tier 8 matchup. This is kind of the standard matchmaking that we're gonna find with the tank. So as I was saying, the tank is kind of an average Joe because it's a series of contradictions. On the one side you have some really low HP pool, on the other side you have good armor. On one side you have really good pen, on the other side you have some really bad dispersion values, and also for some reason the tank really doesn't really manage to aim properly at a longer distance. You also get an average damage of 320, which is pretty decent, pretty good with the 105 caliber gun, which will overmatch some lower armor targets, and you get some really good gun depression, but you're not necessarily doing all that great against higher enemy tier enemy tanks, because they will go through it like butter. The tank is decently mobile, but it's never gonna get onwards on a mobility contest, because it only gets to 6 or 40 kilometers per hour. It has around, I think, 17, at least with my build, 17 specific power to weight ratio, which is good, but it's not brilliant. Now the tank, in my opinion, should be played relatively aggressively in this kind of a matchup, and also when you're top tier as well, because it has the ability to stay in front of the enemy tanks, spot them pretty decently, because it does have 390 view range, and with a good crew you will get to the 445 spotting range. So in this kind of a situation you kind of act also like a spotter. And over here, if you're close enough, you should be pretty good at actually firing towards enemy tanks, as you can see over here. If you're a bit further away, you're not gonna do too well. The armor is gonna make the enemies just a tiny touch more hesitant. So this is kind of again a pretty good situation for the tank. So the good penetration also allows you, if you manage to hit your shots, will allow you to actually get the damage in. The problem is with the bad DPM that it takes quite a long time to get up to respectable amount of damage. So in my opinion, it's kind of an average Joe World of Tanks, because you are able to do quite a number of good things, but you're not gonna be the best at any kind of those things. You're not gonna be the fastest, you're not gonna be the best armored, you're not gonna be the best DPM, firepower, penetration, anything like that. The view range is good, but it's not necessarily the best in class, although that's one of the strongest things about the tank. And the armor is good, but not against skill ammo. So once enemy tanks start firing skill ammo, then you're gonna die really fast. And the problem with it is that you kind of get to a false sense of security whenever you fight with this tank, because you kind of tend to think, okay, my armor will make me kind of invulnerable at this point, and it just doesn't. It just doesn't. If you try to snapshot, as you just saw, you're not gonna do that well, because the tank does take quite a bit of time to also aim properly and fire properly and do all of those things properly. So yeah, it works, it's good, but it's not brilliant. So in my opinion, this is kind of an average Joe tank. And if you do count too much on your armor, you're gonna find out that the hit points aren't really great, so they're not gonna do exceptionally well. You can play it aggressively, so you should play the tank aggressively, but not be alone. So this is again one of those 15 to 1 battles. So yeah, this is how World of Tanks looks. I can't change it, it's just the way it looks. And for some reason, like I said, I just had 15 wins or 14 wins in a row and 1 draw. So yeah, this was yesterday's type of battles. Now let's go in the next one and show you a bit more of what this tank can do. Alright, so now I'm gonna show you another battle that I had in the tank. This is another tier 8 game, and now you're gonna see when when things aren't really working perfectly, but at the same time, again, you can use the tank aggressively. So this is another battle in which there are two enemy RTs, and they will play a role in this battle. This is one of those tanks in which, if the enemies don't really know what they're doing, you can do pretty well in it. Because if they don't really have a clue on how to pen you, and they start panicking, you should press on pretty nicely with it, or pretty seriously. So you can use the fact that the tank does have some decent-ish camo values, and also of the fact that it has this pretty punchy gun with good penetration to actually get quite a bit. So you're able to track the enemy tanks, you're able to assess the situation, and at least as long as you're not too adventurous, you can actually bounce quite a bit of shots. So as you saw over here, just bounce two big shots from a VK 7501K, which does have 128mm guns, so that's a pretty high alpha damage and high caliber gun as well. So yeah, the armor works properly, at least at the high ranges, and when the enemy don't get your higher upper plate. So the one weak point of the tank, it's on the turret over here, as you can just see it, the cupola, and also the lower plate. If you can hide those, then you're pretty golden. The problem is that World of Tanks is so fast these days that you can't really hide those, and the fact that you don't really have the mobility to actually go and yeah, just be the first one, that's not gonna work properly. But as you see, the tank can be decently accurate at higher ranges if you can stay stationary, because the dispersion when just staying in place, when just moving the turret, is pretty good. At least this was my experience with the tank. The problem appears when you're trying to fire on the move, because the accuracy isn't that great. Now, if you do decide to actually go for it in this tank, you should just go pedal to the metal, because it's not one of those tanks in which you can just stay in one place and trade with the enemies. At some point they will find your weak points, and they will start taking your HP really fast. Whenever you're not sure, you're starting to lose the game, right? It's a bit hairy. You're down 2k HP, but at the same time you do have some strong tanks near to you. So I decide to go onwards, and then I see that there's a bad chat which is trying to flank and go on the other side, but when you do have a BZ next to you, then the enemies don't really have all those many things that they're able to do. Now you're gonna see how good the armor of the tank is, because this is why I chose this replay, this specific one. The art is gonna shoot you no matter what, it doesn't really matter what you do, and I'm trying to provide a pretty bad angle to the enemy tanks. I'm trying to reverse. The Gonzalo misses or goes on my plate, over our upper plate, and he's not able to fire towards me. And now you're gonna see how this tank fares up against an Oho who is firing standard ammo, right? So the Oho is firing standard, and I'm just getting basically his titties. I'm getting them each and every shot that I'm firing. Now he overexposes, I fire towards him again, I do some extra damage, he bounces again, and yeah, this is the way the tank works. The Oho does reverse a little bit, he's trying to run away, and then he gets killed. So as you see in this battle, the tank did perform pretty nicely, and now we're in a pretty good advantage. I do try to fire again, it's a pretty optimistic shot. I'm not sure if I did manage to get the Hori 2, was it? Yeah, which is the Tier 8 TD with a pretty dangerous gun. And I'm just seeing, okay, how can I go and get a bit more of the game? And now, after you saw how good the armor is against tanks that fire some standard ammo, you can see a bit again of the firing at around 400 meters, so it's pretty decent, right? But at the same time, you shouldn't ever think that this is a tank that will allow you to actually go against one-on-one against enemy tanks, because if you do try to do that, you'll find out that your HP pool is pretty low, because I just took 2 hits from two dangerous TDs, one of 579, another of 389, and 2 RT shots, and I basically lost all my HP. And as you saw, although the tank is good enough to actually make you believe that you can absolutely kick ass and chew bubblegum at the same time, you definitely can't. Not with this tank, because the HP isn't good enough, and the armor, while good, is not gonna save you. So you need to take into account when you play this tank, because that's why I'm saying it's a mix of good and bad. It's an average Joe that works, but it won't really help you to survive a lot or fast. Now, after this game, in which you saw how the tank fires at a distance, and also how the armor works, and also how you can overexpose yourself and get killed pretty badly, let's go into the final round, in which I fight against some Tier 10s, I think, and then we'll wrap up the video. Alright, now this is a Tier 10 game, in which I'm not necessarily in the best kind of matchup, and you're seeing quite a number of Tier 9s and Tier 10 tanks, and the armor that I just talked to you about previously is not gonna help you too much over here. So the tank does have some good. Let's talk a little bit until the action starts about the shell velocity. So the shell velocity is around 1k per 1k, right? It's 180 with 230, and then you have 180, around the 180 with 300 pen with the premium round. The high explosive isn't worth mentioning about, so you shouldn't really use it unless you want to reset the cap. But this doesn't really happen nowadays, so you can just get away with 2 or 3 shots of high explosive just to, I don't know, finish some tank that you can't really finish, which is a really low HP. So that's the only reason I use those. So in a Tier 10 games, you should be a lot more careful, because your HP isn't really worth much. So what you need to do is have patience. So you're gonna see me be a lot more patient over here and just try and punish enemy mistakes, because this tank, with its really low amount of HP against Tier 10 guns, isn't gonna survive too much, right? So you need to be, if you want to actually do some good stuff with it and actually make it work, you need to use the bushes. What you're seeing me over here is basically just driving forwards and backwards, just being able to spot the outline of the enemy tank and then just punish this overeager pattern over here. I'm just waiting over here, trying to figure out what's happening, and then the pattern goes again. I miss, unfortunately, as you can see, whenever you start moving quite a bit with this tank, it does have the kind of the weird motion in which it doesn't really isn't the most accurate tank, right? So you need to take this into account. If you do want to do the damage to the enemy tanks, you just figure out wherever you think that the enemy is gonna go. But this is for all the tanks. You need to figure out where the enemy tank is gonna be at some point. Just aim at that specific point, and yeah, go like that. Now, as you see, some other tanks aren't really playing as well. They don't really do what I'm doing, just staying behind bush with this decent cam of the tank. And the arty is firing towards them, and I actually lost quite a bit of HP. I lost around 10%, or almost 20% of my HP, without even getting spotted, right? But at the same time, if you find enemies which are a lot more aggressive than they should be, then this kind of strategy can work, and it can work decently well, right? So now I'm spotting also ISU 152. I fire towards him. His outline is also in the open, and yeah, now he has to back down. So in the first 3.5 minutes on Redshire, the situation is pretty even, right? This is gonna be the longest game of today. The other ones, sure enough, there were around 15-1, 6 or 15-2, or some other faster games. But this is a hard one. This is tier 10. It's not necessarily tier 8, right? So now I'm firing at the Leo. I should have just fallen back a little bit to not get spotted, but as you saw, I am getting spotted because I wasn't behind the bushes. I also fire a shot towards the 752, and I managed to pen him. So the good pen of the tank, combined with the fact that those enemy tanks were showing their sides, allowed me to put some pretty accurate shots into them. So the tank is good at not necessarily sniping, but providing fire support at medium and close range. And if you can find yourself in a good position when the enemy light isn't spotting you, then yeah, this can work. So I'm doing 2.1k damage in the tank, and I still have most of my HP intact. The problem is at this point that I'm not able to actually push by any kind of means, because I'm on a tier 8. So what do you do in this kind of a situation? Well, what you can do is basically stay and be a nuisance towards the enemy, trying to be kind of a spotter and also use the shots correctly. So just being the nuisance in front of the enemies, right? Just be patient. I'm firing towards the Leo. I do the bit of damage, and now the Leo is dead. So the same Leo that was a bit too aggressive on the other side, he's too aggressive again on this side. Unfortunately, the bad accuracy of the gun doesn't really allow me. Maybe I didn't aim properly towards that meal. It was a hard shot, so that was a miss. And now I'm just I'm just chilling in the middle of the map. I know that there are quite a number of enemy tanks on the other sides, but at the same time, while I'm over here with my good view range, they shouldn't really be able to cross and flank us and go towards the Gorilla and the Tortoise, who are covering that side over here. So it's a kind of a split map scenario in which the ball is in the enemy's field, and we should be. The position is pretty good as long as our heavy tanks aren't dead and are able to maybe push a little bit on that side. Then we should be able to do just fine. I'm trying to figure out if I can find a better position towards this T95. Unfortunately, it doesn't really seem to be the case because he's on that dip. So I need to take a decision. Do I try and advance a little bit to see if I can spot that T95? At the same time, I know that there might be some other tanks on the crest, like that Grilly over there. I fall back a little bit. I didn't fire because I knew that there might be some other tanks and I don't want to give my position yet. But right now we're starting to get a little bit of extra firepower. I'm seeing this STRV. I fire towards the STRV. Now I do take a decision to actually go towards him. Unfortunately, he fires and gets my ammo rack, and now I'm basically half health. I fortunately managed to miss a shot on the enemy. I get shot by the STRV, and I'm pretty scared because yeah, I'm just one shot. I fire towards his cupola. I miss. He misses as well. And now it's a game of chicken, because he might get me on one shot, I might get shot at from above. So I decide, okay, it's not worth for me to get shot and get killed, so I need to just be a nuisance over here, because apart from me, there's only the Astron Rex over here. I need to be able to at least make sure that my team isn't flanked, right? So if I can get some extra shots, then I will, but I'm not gonna go towards that STRV willy-nilly just to get killed without any kind of other things. Now what I can do is just try to maybe get that STRV if I can get on the others on the lip of the hill, because I do have 10 degrees of gun depression, so I do intend to use it. And yeah, I'm just figuring out if I can find him. I go towards a bit further up. I managed to spot the enemy Artie. I fired him, and now I track him, and now he's dead. So 3.5k damage and 1.4k spotting. Now basically the enemy team melts. So yeah, it's just a matter of cleaning up. So I say, okay, fair enough, maybe I was a bit too passive at the end of the game, but at the same time I did exactly what I needed to do. And yeah, I get the final shot and kill the object 752. So as you saw, a game in a tier 10 in which you don't really need to fire any kind of gold, and it's good enough to do 3.7 key damage in this tank, in which you kind of saw also the good, the bad, and the ugly. The bad is the fact that you don't have the HP to fight against even tier 8s. The good is that you have the armor to fight against the tier 7s and tier 6s, and against some tier 8s that don't really have good enough pen, or don't really know how to press 2 or to actually aim at weak points. The ugly is the fact that the gun doesn't really work as it should be or as it should at longer ranges, so you need to play at short to medium ranges and also try and save your HP. So yeah, I think that kind of says all that you need to see about the tank. So in this battle I did quite a bit of damage to the enemy team. This was good enough for a first class mastery badge, and also spotted quite a bit. I had to play a lot more passively than usual, because this tank doesn't really do all that well in tier 10 games, or tier 10 games like this was. But still, with the help of people like this guy, who actually had a brilliant game, we managed to get the win. And yeah, the enemy team was pretty decent. I shot 17 shots. I managed to hit 12 of them. 12 were pens. So the tank does have enough pen. The problem is you're not gonna always get your shots in, because the accuracy isn't the best. As you can see, the dispersion isn't great. So this is gonna be the limiting factor over here. But still, I think this was a pretty good game with the Iron Arnie, and yeah, I think this was a pretty good session with the tank. Right now, at the end of the session, I have to say that this was 15 games played with the Iron Arnie, 14 victories and 1 draw. So I don't know why, but the tank just seems to work. So I used to have a pretty bad opinion of the tank, but I have to review it a little bit, because it just works, you know. This was, I think, the most damage that I did in the tank. I have a bit more experience with it, and yeah, I think it's a good tank. It's an average Joe tank, so you're never gonna do brilliant in it, but you will have quite a few good games and you'll win quite a few games with the tank, because I think just the Schwarzenegger effect. So the tank is pink on this side and yellow on this side. It's probably because of the light. Still, it does look pretty nice. It's a nice effect. And yeah, I don't know. For some reason, the tank just worked today. But it's a tank in which I can't lose. And on that bombshell, thank you very much for watching this game, or this series of games, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye now.